Welcome, Ian, to today's session. And it's an absolute pleasure to have you join us for today.
Thank you, William. It's an absolute pleasure to be invited to speak to you.
Ah, well, we've always gone back and we've had discussions on this. So it's a pleasure to have you on Friday evening and to share this particular topic on value streams for success or transforming value streams for success. So, viewers, welcome to today's podcast session. And we're talking about how to improve businesses. And our focus today is on improving true value streams. I've got with me Ian, and he's a technology professional who's dedicated to operational excellence. He's helped both large enterprises and tech startups to scale their technology functions. And these are the nuggets he's going to share on efficiency, quality, continuous improvement, and how to ensure that our customer centricity focus is well driven. What's so fascinating about Ian is outside the world of the corporate glasses, he's a fitness enthusiast, a martial artist, and he likes running role playing games. So if you do hear stuff about martial arts and how to keep fit, you know where to find Ian. I'm all about her. And
Maybe.
maybe that's good stuff. And let's spend some time delving into that area where when you're able to transform value streams, you're able to commit to excellence and you are able to build organizations that are collaborative. And Ian brings that nuggets to help us think and how we on any technology transformation can guide and collaborate and support the organization on the journey. Welcome again, Ian.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
William. Looking forward
Ian,
to you picking my brain.
oh, awesome. Ian, as we go into this area, a few people will be asking value streams, transforming value streams. Tell us a bit. What is value stream exactly? What would you say is value streams?
Yeah, I think it's important to define what it is, but also to define what it's not, because that
Mm,
can help clarify things. So in my various guises, I've looked after customer journeys and various value streams. Um, a value stream represents all the sequence of activities
yeah,
that deliver a product or service from start to finish, like
yeah.
from ideation to delivery and then ongoing improvements.
Mm,
Um, the real benefit about looking at value streams, for instance, is that it gives you visibility into all of the various steps. I mean, I
hmm
know we're going to cover other things where we dive deeper, but
yeah.
get to see the steps
hmm
involved. That helps you identify inefficiencies. And what's when we talk about steps, it's all the manual, automatic, all
hmm
every single bit of interaction that goes through it. And then ultimately, it's to improve quality and customer satisfaction. If you're
Yeah.
not delivering to your customers, what's the point? And
Mm,
I think it's important to define what it's not. Customer journey, which your listeners and viewers were probably aware of. The customer journey is that external customer experience of it.
hmm
Like they're watching the show, and the value stream part
mm,
is all the bit behind stage, getting the actors ready, getting the
yeah.
set ready, all the marketing and all of that. The value streams are all feed into that overall customer experience.
Ian, I like that. If you're not giving the customer the best experience, then why are you doing what you are doing? So, can you give us an example of a specific value stream in any sector you've worked in so that our audiences can piece together and start building that imaginations in their mind?
Yeah, I mean, my experience mainly has been in large GSIB banks,
Okay.
HSBC, etc. So, um, from a service management perspective,
hmm
someone's using your system
Yeah.
and an incident ticket, standard thing. They've got a problem. They send a ticket. It comes into the system. It's there's a process where it goes down, it gets tagged, it gets put in front of someone. They then obviously review that. Can they
hmm
resolve it? If they can't, they escalate it up. It might go into third tier support where you're actually looking at other
hmm
people sort of cross-functionally. It might be a developer, for example, that comes in,
Yeah.
an expert. They go through, they resolve it, they send back to the customer. Hopefully a resolution has been done. If so,
Mm.
ticket is closed. There's reviews afterwards. There's a sort of a post-mortem into how certain improvements, you might be updating documentation, all of those. That whole life cycle is a fairly typical value stream. There's been a problem, it's identified, it's analysed, it's hopefully resolved, and then it's gone through and completed and then sort of improved upon.
Yeah, you've talked about all the steps that make up a value stream. And how do they differ from just that traditional process management or workflow systems? Is
And
there, yeah, go for it.
uh, it's the mindset around it mainly. So
Okay.
from a workflow
Mm,
improvement process, you're looking at a very specific set of processes and steps, and you're trying to find efficiencies in there. When you start talking about value streams,
mm,
you're looking at how the whole end to end, it's very holistic. And what you're trying to understand
mm,
is how are you able to optimize the entire flow of
mm,
activities, and sometimes improving one thing, theory of constraints, you'll break something else, or you'll break something inadvertently. By
yeah,
when you're looking at value streams, it helps give you a little bit of clarity
yeah.
on what you should be sort of
Mm,
looking at to try and improve. So it's a more, I mean, when I talk about customer centricity,
yeah.
it's ensuring that every single part of you is thinking about how that impacts the customer and your sort of user base.
So you've just nailed it. Customer centricity and how every single part of it supports the customer and our user base. So there are some unique benefits here that value stream thinking brings to us. You said one, customer centricity. Can you add a few apart from that customer centricity bit? And why should execs bother?
And some of the major benefits that you get
Mm,
are that you start to build clarity around your whole process. When we're talking about holistically and
yeah,
customer centric, that's fine.
yeah,
But normally when we're given something for customers, it's very rarely it's just one team. There's normally a cross-functional collaboration somewhere along the line. You might rely on infrastructure, might rely on marketing or sales or whatever. This helps people see the wider picture of how the organization works, and it helps you then tease out um, dependencies, constraints, those types of things. So that then helps you identify your improvement initiatives. Where
mm,
should you be focusing your
mm,
effort, which is normally expensive and time consuming? Where should you
yeah,
be doing it best? So it helps bubble up to the surface, those areas, but also in standard process flow, people are very almost like racehorses. You're in a job, you're just doing your thing. When you
yeah,
start looking at value streams, it helps people understand why they're doing what they're doing. Because again,
mm,
pulling into the customer centric bit, you're not just coding. Actually, you're generating some software that enables a person to do a particular set of activities that they really want to gain benefit from. It helps you see that wider piece, and that should help leadership level, for example, where they should be prioritizing their focus. It should help those strategic decisions. It gives you data to make those data driven decisions.
mm, mm, mm. So it looks very, very important for organizations. And it's like we've delved into the meat and we've not looked at a historical perspective. What's the brief history behind value stream thinking and what are the origins? How did the
And,
concept evolve?
so you'll have gone through early 20th century methods, Taylor, Ford and his fantastic production line,
Hmm.
going into everyone probably on your podcast has heard about the Toyota production line, sort of post World War II.
Yeah.
Lean manufacturing really came to its own in the 80s. And then you started to see, as computing actually became more ubiquitous,
Yeah.
um, the digital technologies that went into there. How do you continuously improve, etc. I remember studying back in 1992 at university. Sorry, everyone, I'm old. Womack, looking at this, the first kind of principles of this work. Then Eric Ries came along and showed us, you know, sort of like, wow, DevOps project and all this amazing stuff to do with IT. Now I think we're at a really exciting time because, you know, we've got stuff like Karen Martin, 2013. She wrote her and Mike Osterling wrote value stream mapping, but probably first of its kind, you know, to really do it. And she's obviously still a big consultant there. Now you've got people like Helen Beale and the Value Stream Consortium. You've got Steve Piera, Andrew Davis. You've got the team topology guys, Manu Pays. There's a much bigger emphasis now to understand that value streams have a massive benefit for organizations. Doesn't mean it's easy, you know, it's complex change, but it's really, I think we're starting to go into a bit of a golden period. So it's got more prominence in the probably last from about 2019, 2020 to now, so the last 4 or 5 years, it's starting to really pick up. But it's followed through that whole standard lean agile journey that we've probably all encountered so far.
Look, you've just dealt with a lot of my questions that I have, and it makes me feel like I need to open to the next page and be able to ask more because you've talked about the key figures who have contributed to this field over the years, and you've taken us way back to how it evolved. And well, working with some clients, I know it's taking some of the teams some time to get their head around what value streams are. But is it for any specific industry or any business can benefit from this approach?
I think you can. I think any company can benefit from it
Yeah.
if you have customers, or even if you do anything,
Mhm.
because it helps you understand why you're doing things and it gives you a picture of your whole sort of end-to-end system. I think it's beneficial for anyone. At some point when you're successful, you will scale.
Yeah.
And as you know, everyone's probably experienced scaling is hard.
Hard.
It makes things very, you add more people in, Conway's law, it all gets messy. So the primary benefactors and where you see a lot of the luminaries doing a lot of their work
Mhm.
are in the big, large enterprises because these organizations have so many layers of complexity, governance and policies and regulations and everything else.
Yeah.
Having something like a value stream helps you kind of unpick a lot of the what's actually there. It's not just thousands of silos. So when you're dealing with sort of complex, adaptive, where you have customers, whether it's internal, it might be a development team or a support team. You could be higher up the stream than them. Um, that will benefit you. It just gives you a bit of clarity, but it takes a mindset. And I know you're going to ask me later how to make it successful or best successful, but a lot of it is down to standard change management practices.
Yeah. Well, you've picked my question of, gosh, how do you make it successful? But before we look at how do we make it successful and try to get people to start understanding some of the benefits that you talked about on focusing on value streams,
Um,
maybe can you, okay, an example, a case study where in your work, yeah, I know you can call client names, but where has value stream implementation led to a significant improvement? Or what metrics or KPIs show that, okay, we were looking at the organizations in a siloed form, and now in adopting a value stream thinking, it's helped significantly by 10%, 15%, 20%.
and So you've touched on a really interesting thing. People love metrics, and
Yeah.
what I'm seeing currently is a no, probably lots of discussions. can't
Mm.
they? You could do the standard Dora metrics. You could look at lead time, cycle time, all of
Yeah.
this. Is it faster? But the debate that's happening now is, does lead time or cycle time actually refer to what's happening with the customer? Is it customer value? Because you could have a fantastic idea that delivers value. It
Mm-hmm.
sits in someone's backlog for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're only starting to do the timing of your metrics for commits,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, great. It took 6 weeks to put into production and the customer's using it, but it sat there for a year. So actually, by
Mm.
that point, the world's changed, the customers changed their mind. It's no longer valuable. So I think going, if we delve into the vanity metrics perspective,
Mm-hmm.
you've really got to have a good idea on what you're wanting. So should you then be thinking, perhaps as soon as I get this request from a customer, or I have this fantastic idea, as soon as it's generated as a story, is that then when we measure how quickly does that go through your system to reach the customer? you
Mm.
know so you can count things. I mean, if you look at Toyota, one of their massive gains was they reduced lead time by 50%. Their defect rates went down, which is obviously good because that saves you money.
Says a lot.
There's plenty of things. And I can use one from one of the previous companies I worked. If we look at support desk, it doesn't have to be these huge, big, grand things. It can be very focused on a very narrow value stream. Ticketing. We get lots of tickets, small team, getting absolutely swamped, finding it really difficult because the overall view of the process wasn't quite there. You're then pulling in lots of other people who are having to try to help. So you're stopping them doing the things that they normally do. So it's like throwing a big stone into a pond and there's ripples everywhere.
Mm.
When we looked at the value stream aspect of it, what we realized was it was actually how we categorized the issues coming in,
Mm-hmm.
how we looked at the process of reviewing and then escalation. Once we did that over the space of, I think it took about 2-3 months. Once we'd done the mapping and the implementation, we quadrupled the number of tickets that the team itself could manage just because it was more efficient.
Mm.
It got helped. It helped in a couple of ways. One,
Mm.
it added some order to the chaos.
Mm.
But a valuable game that I didn't really appreciate too much at the time was that it helped all of the teams who were impacted by this really understand what this team had to go through to deal with the ticket. Before it's, oh, it's just a ticket. But actually, there was a whole bunch of where it came in. They had
Mm.
to stop what they were doing. They had to spend time to identify what it was. They had to have a certain number of skills to be able to actually analyze this. Then they'd have to escalate to the right people at the right time and make sure that they saw it. Then handle all the communications with the customer. So there was a whole bunch of items that had never really been appreciated by the rest of the team. So what we ended up seeing
Mm.
was more empathy within the organization and more compassion as to what a team was involved in. And then the aim then was to ripple that out and say, okay, so what's the value stream like for when the development team have got to do this? And it helped to sort of work out how to structure it, how to
Yeah.
look at new hires, scaling, all of that. So it was beneficial on multiple levels.
Ah. So a lot of deep knowledge and the case study. Thank you for that. A lot of deep knowledge, case study on its implementation and how Toyota benefited from it, and not to focus on vanity metrics. Those are very key things that execs or leaders need to be aware of when they want to go on this journey. So we've talked about the history, we've talked about the benefits, we've talked about what it is. So, what first steps are needed when you want to start implementing this value stream thinking or implementing value stream as way for the organization to start seeing all the improvements you've talked about?
And you know, I mentioned before it's like standard change management stuff,
Okay.
and that's an easy flippant thing to throw out.
I don't
Um,
know whether change management is standard though, Ian.
yeah, yeah, not exactly. Well, there, that's another conversation.
All right.
But first of all, get a grounding as to what this actually is.
Absolutely.
Really, there's lots of resources. The Value Stream Consortium with you sort of headed up by Helen Beale, DevOps
Hmm.
Institute. These guys are fantastic. There's lots of resources there now to help people. Like I say, it's not like back in the dark days when it was like 15 or 20 people. Um, I think an important thing here to do is start off small.
Mm.
You know, don't go massive big bang thing. When you're actually looking at mapping, there's a couple of, or rather, a set of processes. The first one is outcome mapping. You know,
Mm.
what are you actually trying to achieve? Why?
Hmm.
Who for? You know, really understand your business or your area. What are you trying to do it for?
Hmm.
And then you've got like a current state that you want to try to work on. Take a function. You know, I did a simple one, ticketing. Look at
Hmm.
that, or any product one, and just go through what are all the steps, manual, automatic, all the handoffs
Hmm.
that are involved in that. Time it. How long does
Timing.
each of
Yeah.
these bits take?
Yeah.
Uh, where are there any constraints,
That's right. Yeah.
dependencies?
Hmm. Hmm.
That creates, you know, normally a very uncomfortable image of this is actually what we do. And I think that's an important thing to get in this, is
Yeah.
that because this has such a psychological impact when you see it, you'll
Yeah.
either be utterly depressed and think, oh my God, or you'll be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's ultra important that you've got buy-in from the top. Because
Mm.
if you don't have that, you'll be all excited and they'll, you know, kind of say, actually, we don't see value in this. So
Mhm.
you've got other stuff to do. Understand what the customer's perspective is. If you're a technology team and you service other technology teams, they're your customers.
Mm.
What is it they need from you? You know, how do they engage with you? So understanding that then helps you frame everything.
Mm.
And you, like I say, as part of this, you're looking at your bottlenecks, you're looking at where's their waste. Do you happen to have a handoff to someone which is manual and it relies on someone, you know, it might take a day, it might take 2 weeks, depending on whatever they've got on their plate. So identify all of those things. While you're doing that, look at the ideal state, which is,
Mm.
if you look at lean, it's your single flow. There's nothing in the world can stop me. Physics doesn't exist. There's no problems, and it just goes through here.
Mm.
And then look at your future map. You know, in 6 months' time,
Yeah.
what would we like it to look like? What do we think it could look like? And
Mm.
then do an implementation plan for it.
Okay.
And and try to look at, you know, you mentioned the vanity metrics.
Yeah.
And it start off with a couple of metrics that are
Mm.
important to the process that you've got. Most areas know, even though they may not express it, they'll know a problem area. So if you look at this value stream map and you decide, you know what, I'm going to try and reduce the amount of time it takes from A to B by 50%.
Yeah.
Set that as your first target. Start small. I
Mm.
think the big benefit is when you do your current state map and
Yeah.
understand what you're actually there for and why and who your customers are, you can start to really get a feel
Hmm.
for what you should be doing next.
Mm.
In a way, it might be speaking to removing a manual handoff,
Yeah.
automating a password request,
Mm.
changing security keys somewhere. It will help you see and then identify opportunities to move on. And if you can set little implementation plans to tackle bits of it
Yeah.
and measure that change,
Hmm.
then that'll help you get on board. Don't go big bang.
No. So don't go big bang. Get the leadership involved. Start small. Build a business case for it. Would you recommend? So, one of the challenges we see around a lot of transformation initiatives is the challenge of having dedicated teams to deliver some work.
Yeah,
And you could have a project manager who's been assigned 4 or 5 projects, and you ask him which
yeah.
which one is a priority, and he's thinking, and those are some of the key challenges project managers or people within transformation face. Would you say assign it to a dedicated team would help take and then get that team to deliver? Or are there any other challenges aside resource to value stream mapping?
So I know I keep on going on about change, but
Yeah.
you know, the cultural resistance in the area that you're in, they might just be like, well, we're too busy for this. Um, they don't really understand it.
Mm-hmm.
They're very much this ivory tower. Sorry,
Mm.
it's only us. Or, I mean, what I've seen in some places is that you might voice the, hey, I'm going to do this, and you get told, no, they own that. That
Mm.
they're responsible for that. Although it's never been touched, someone else owns it. There might be a sense of ownership within an organization that you need to try to overcome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you don't have the data to back up, you've got to do your homework. If you don't have that data to support your
Yeah.
initiative drive, then really it's just an opinion,
Okay.
and that gets nowhere. Um, if you just have a short-term focus,
Mm-hmm.
so going back to your question of should you have a dedicated team, I think it would depend on what your organization is like. I think you could probably start off with a couple of people
Mm.
who just spend the time um, going it through. I mean, when I've run mapping work groups, what you might do, for example, is you get the team that's involved, right? So if I need to deliver this
Yeah.
product, who are all the people involved?
Yeah.
Sit them in a room for a few hours
Yeah.
and get them to walk through the process and just
Mm.
map it out.
Okay.
And that might be the only place you get within the first week,
Mm.
but that's when you'll start to tease out all these little things. And from there, it's I think the biggest thing is, can you look at this and really send a story around what the benefits of this are? If you can't do that with
Yeah.
data to back it up, then you're going to find it really, really hard. So where I've seen this successful is where you spend the time to do the initial mapping, to have an idea about the data, to really have an idea about the benefits it can do. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a benefit about we've suddenly increased revenue by 50%. It
Mm.
may be as simple as it now means I no longer have to speak to this team every 25 minutes to get
Mm-hmm.
like you're reducing their cognitive load and allowing them
Yeah.
to work. And that's a massive gain, and they'll thank you. So it
Mm.
helps create kind of harmony amongst cross-functional teams as well.
Oh, so when you cover those, you're dealing with the challenges, and you're also dealing with the challenges that the team will face, supporting leaders in implementing value stream. Were you
Yeah.
about to add a point?
Yeah, I was. How could I forget that? As well as having all of that, one thing I have discovered is that if you do not keep on monitoring it
Yeah.
and communicating what's happening
Yeah.
around it, then then you're really up against it. And
mm,
if we do the SMART principles as well, make sure what you're trying to do is specific, it's
mhm,
measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound, so that everyone knows what they're going to do. It's very easy to communicate status updates to all of the
mhm,
relevant stakeholders, and that you then you're able to have that data then, and you can
mm,
broadcast it out.
mm,
Socializing it is so important.
mm, mm. So for what you've said is there's the value stream transformation to think about
Yep.
and to build that culture and thinking into the organization. And I know
Yeah.
from the last time we had a conversation, you talked about culture eat strategy.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so if we don't build that support from execs to make sure that it's built into the organization strategy, it will be a challenge because the execs haven't bought in. Before we come down to the actual processes of value stream mapping, you must make sure that that value stream thinking and transformation has been bought by the execs, and which
I
is
mean,
very
what you
important.
could do,
Yeah.
William, is
Yeah.
you could offer to listen to them, hear
Mm,
what's problematic for them, what's one thing
yeah.
what's one horrible process that they, if they could change, they could.
Mm,
Okay. And then offer to say, well, why don't we try this? Why don't we try this principle on you to see if I can make your life easier, so
mm,
that you generate something that they they respond to it and they get benefit from. So they then, like, you're trying to build advocacy, and you
yeah.
you want them to evangelize. And if you don't
Mm,
have anyone who's already on your side,
yeah.
try to find a way to get them on your side.
Mm, mm. So, with what you've said, the assumption is we've built leaders as our champions for this value stream transformation. The team is all set up. We are ready to rock and roll. What are some of the techniques for successfully mapping and analyzing the value stream? Is it just having pen to paper, inviting folks to a workshop, and having those conversations that
Yeah,
solves
it
it?
could be. It could
Yeah.
be, but I mean, I mentioned as well that with the work group,
Yeah.
what's very important is that you have all of the people involved in that process.
Hmm.
If you just go by two or three people, they can make assumptions for others.
Yeah.
What you're trying to get is a true picture, a transparency of what's
Mm,
actually happening.
yeah.
So you might get change managers, you might get developers, you might get support staff, you might get
Yeah.
someone who looks after the website, you might have someone who goes to the change board. Any of that flow, depending on what it is,
Mm,
you want them in that room. And that's where you're, from a value stream mapping perspective,
mm,
yes, that's your on a board, post-it notes, whatever it is, just getting it down. You've got um, what I find very useful is
mm,
your root cause analysis. So I like to do
okay.
3, 5, and 9 whys,
Mm,
really, you know,
mm,
trying to dig into what's the human behaviors that underlie the technical problems. You
yeah.
know, like an example of the complaint I heard was, I want to do this change, but for me to get this, I've got to do this, etc. That team's horrible. You dig a bit deeper, that team who's been requested in the first place has its own set of constraints because of something else. And then you sort of get down to, probably it's a policy or it's a
Mm,
regulation or something else. And being
mm,
able to understand that, you can then communicate that further out so that people, again, I talk about compassion
mm,
and empathy. We're all people in a complex system. And remembering that is, I think, is very important for value stream mapping.
yeah.
So the root cause analysis will help you understand why
Mhm,
you may have certain methods, why you've got certain constraints, etc. And
mm,
then what I like to have is a Gemba walk. And the Gemba walk is you basically
mm,
sitting with your person. I know I'm teaching you to fish here. I mean, you've already know how to fish, but what I found very useful was just sitting with the teams and
yeah.
working through, right, how do you do this task? Same as when you're doing in product management and you're looking at
Mm,
an end user wondering why they can't
mm,
use your interface, because when it's in front of them, you can see that it's not intuitive. It's that thing. And then from an implementation perspective,
Mm-hmm.
I I prefer to use Kanban, to be
Mm.
honest,
Okay.
initially. Um, and then, Kaizen, you're doing your continuous improvement. The functions I'm helping set up just now, for example, where I currently work, that's all about putting something in place to do a set of activities
Mm.
and then learning from what works and what doesn't.
Mm.
And we've given ourselves permission to mess up
Mm.
because we
Feel
don't know all the
fast.
answers.
Yeah.
And what we try to do is we have metrics that we look at to measure the efficiencies and inefficiencies that we've got in our system.
Okay. 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 So saying that pen and paper, brown paper, the Gemba work, are there any tools or
I think I currently live in Visio. So positive, negative, but I mean it's going to depend on your organization.
yeah.
But where I've used Miro
Mm-hmm.
previously. That's
Yeah.
that's very useful. Anything that's got these boards is useful. Sticky notes, I've lived on them, entire walls full of them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Visio, standard thing, lucid charts, anything which is graphical that way
Yeah.
works. But as you said, you could get by on just big sheets of paper, a couple of pens and pencils,
Mm-hmm.
and a whole pad of different colored sticky notes. Like anyone who's done Scrum in product,
Yeah.
it's that simple because all you're trying to do
Yeah.
is visualize what that flow is, and then like I say, I've used in the most basic form, I've just used a big sheet of paper, sticky notes, and then used a pencil or a pen to draw movements and cycles and various other bits and pieces. And the little sticky notes is just these are the processes or the
Mm-hmm.
artifacts that we're uncovering. So it doesn't have to be high tech.
Okay. 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 So it doesn't have to be high tech at the start, but
No.
once we build it into it, we could bring the likes of the Visio, Miro, and the other tools. We are into the transformation. The executive leaders have bought into it. What are some of the key success factors? I know we don't want to touch on vanity metrics, but what makes this successful?
No, reiterating the messaging side of it.
Mm,
Data, you have to have the data. You have to understand what the outcome of your change does. How does your change to your value stream impact the experience of the customer? Do they get it quicker? Does it make them happier? Does it make them want to shout your names off the rooftop and they end up selling for you? Do they become that virtual sales force? But understanding that there's real tangible benefits, and most executives, it's really about the bottom line. Are you saving money somewhere along the line? If you can prove that,
yeah.
then that's beneficial. If you're freeing up developers'
Mhm.
time, say for example, there's a process which means that they spend 30% of their time in meetings or on phone calls. If the change in your workflow through the value stream
Yeah.
removes that, that's waste, isn't it? So
Okay.
you've suddenly got them being able to generate value. I mean, something else will come in, but at least you've removed
Mm,
that part of it.
mm,
The communication aspect,
yeah.
data, and I think what helps is to any good project management part where you have very defined structures
Yeah.
and engaging with your stakeholders at all levels, because everyone should understand what the benefits are. It's not just for the stakeholders. You want to be able to communicate and show to everyone in that value stream that this has been beneficial, because we're all humans.
Mm,
And if we've had a good experience, then more than likely when we come to the next person and you've got a relationship, then you'll say, actually, no, look, it's saved me time. Now I can go home and see the kids, or I can do
mm.
this or whatever. Having that will help benefit it. And yeah,
Yeah. Thanks for sharing those key factors that communication, data, ensuring that leaders are key in the process. Is leadership so important in the process?
Yes. If you don't have the
Why?
buy-in, if you don't have
Yeah.
the leadership buy-in, then it'll die very quickly as an initiative, unless what you're showing is so incredible of a transformation,
Hmm.
because the leaders have their strategic vision that they're there to make successful.
Hmm.
And if you can't tie in your benefits to what they're trying to achieve,
Yeah.
then you're working counter to what they're
Yeah.
trying to do.
Objective. Mm, mm. So leadership is so important to drive it. And that's a best practice for making sure that we embed value streams. So, can you provide some best practice or tips for sustaining the improvement and continuously optimizing the value streams when we've done all the hard work
Yeah.
and we've implemented it? We've made people understand it's going to help release silos. People are going to see the end-to-end flow of work and how it benefits the customer. What are some of the best practices or tips for sustaining that improvement?
And what I found successful is to, one, again, keep communication going. So
Okay.
you want to keep on broadcasting that you're making these changes, because if you're following Kaizen, and if you're following things like Agile,
Yeah.
I ITIL, then that's another thing that I'm heavy on ITIL,
Mm-hmm.
is when you're doing future mapping, you're always looking to see what improvements you can make.
Yeah.
And so a way to keep this going and rippling throughout an organization is to keep on doing these various improvements, keep on communicating the benefits, trying to educate others within the organization. That
Mm.
education is really
Yeah.
key to talk about the benefits, even if you're doing like lunchtime sessions, or you might do work groups. And people want to join you when you've got a feel good story,
Mm.
and
Mm.
keeping it front and center of someone's mind, really showing the benefits of what you've done, is one of the surest ways for other
Mm.
people to want to benefit from it. And because you're collecting data on what's changed,
Yeah.
more than likely in an organization, even if they're so
Mm.
big that you've never spoken to them or know who they are, you can find patterns of saying, right, when a team has looked like this, has this composition, this infrastructure, and when we've done this change,
Yeah.
it's saved 30, 40, 50%, or even 10%.
Mm-hmm.
That narrative is then seen as hopefully attractive to that other team, when
Mm-hmm.
they've got capacity and space to be able to take on those initiatives. So that's what I find has been the most successful when I've been applying this to organizations.
Mm. So your work has been within startups and within large organizations. How do we ensure that when we implement these value streams, it's scalable and it's sustainable for the long term? Is it?
And
Yeah, go ahead.
it almost feels like a trick, but how can I ensure it's scalable?
Yeah.
Um, I'd say the first thing is, if you're being thorough, you're documenting everything anyway.
Yeah.
Um, One of the worst experiences is you come into something, and it's all kind of like a black box, and no one knows how it works and
It
everything else like
works. Yeah.
that. By having everything documented and transparent and available for people to see,
Mm.
as you scale, for me, the education part is about bringing in people and learning as they're coming in, making sure that knowledge isn't lost in key individuals,
Mm.
that you've got a repository which is accurate and up to date and relevant to what you're doing. Um, and obviously, depending on how quickly you scale,
Mm.
that's going to be a bit problematic. But that's how I would want to try to make it robust enough and resilient enough as a practice,
Mm.
with all the benefits, that as you grow, as functions grow, that
Yeah.
you can then take that onwards.
Thank you so much, Ian. It's just looked like rapid fire, me sending the questions and you spending time to download all these years of experience to help make this session very engaging. Do you have a question for me before we wrap this session? Because
I just wanted to thank you, William, and for people listening and watching.
yeah,
I have spent quite a few years doing this, and I would just urge people to really, if they haven't looked at this or considered it, to really do, because it adds a real human element to technology work,
yes,
because it really delves deep into why we do stuff, and
hmm,
ultimately it's to help another human being achieve something that makes their life better in some way. So that's how I view this. So my question just be is, maybe we should work together one day, William, and do this stuff.
the question I was going to hit back with you is when do we have to do the next one? Because there's so much I think we have to touch on value streams because if it starts being scalable, there's a need for the organization to implement key steps to make this sustainable. And we've just scratched the surface of value stream
Yeah.
mapping. And
I've got a recommendation for you, and I'll
okay,
plug someone else's book. So I talked about it before. I
yeah,
told you, I sort of mentioned before that it's really starting to come into its own.
yes,
Um, so there's a book called Flow Engineering, which has
okay,
just come out by Steve Piera and Andrew Davis, and it's about very quickly conducting value stream mapping in your organization
okay,
and then acting upon it. Then team topologies, Manu Pace,
hmm,
Matthew Skelton, and then
yeah,
Helen Beale. They're a great start to get a lot of information quickly,
mm,
and get your leaders to look at that and see it, and I'd find it hard for anyone to say we wouldn't benefit from this.
mm, mm. Ian, it looks like we have to pause now just to prepare for the second episode because there is a lot to touch on just on the book of flow engineering. And I know I could take a lot of your time, but we'll keep it all for our next episode. And I'd like to thank all our listeners who are listening. Don't forget to connect with Ian via his LinkedIn profile, Ian Russell. Go on LinkedIn, you'll find him. Send him a question. Maybe your question could be what we'll be discussing at the next session. And I'll leave his details in the video or in the podcast. So thank you for listening. Thank you, Ian, for sharing uh, this particular interesting topic with me. Value stream mapping is so key for transformations, and it helps organizations see a lot of benefits. It's been a pleasure, and folks, it's William, your host on this transformation podcast, and we look forward to seeing you listening to our next session. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, William.